Hello, everyone, and welcome tonight. It is Sunday night, July 5th, 2026, and this old feller is Glenn Rawson. I appreciate you being here. You know, I don't know how long I've been doing these firesides, but it's been a long time. Ever since, 2020? That's a lot of firesides and a lot of people watching, and I'm grateful. Thank you for joining me tonight. Been a lot of things on my mind this week, and I hope to be able to share some of them with you. Now, as you know, very many times in the opening of these firesides, I'll talk about books or tours or various things that I'm going to be doing in the near future. But tonight, I would like to share something with you that is developing. You know, I've taken tours all over the world. And for most of the people that come with me, most of the time, that's a bucket list vacation. But something is developing, something new, something that will give you the opportunity not only to experience a vacation, but also really make a difference in someone's life in a very good way. There's a tour opening up that, to be honest with you, cost you practically nothing and give you the opportunity to change someone's life. If you think you might be interested in this, more information will be coming later. Stay tuned. And for those of you as disciples of Christ who want to make a difference in the world and see the world at the same time, well, this might be your chance. Hang on. It's coming. I'll be talking more about it later on. Now, tomorrow morning, bright and early, dark 30, I'm leaving and I'll be out on the Cowboy Trail for the next 8 days. So next Sunday, I'll be somewhere out on the Cowboy Trail. And this time, I will be shooting short videos, little reels from out on the Cowboy Trail, telling the story of the great cowboy and the American West. That will be starting tomorrow. Now, in keeping with that, there's another trail tour that's coming up soon. In October, I'm going back out on the Pioneer Trail. I can't get enough of that Pioneer Trail. We're going to go back out on the Pioneer Trail. One last shot at the end of the season in October of 2026. The Pioneer Trail as you've never seen it before. The stories, the places, the experiences. I intend to immerse you in the feeling of what it would have been like to have been a pioneer out on that trail. So that will be in October of this year. And if you're interested in coming with me across that trail, go to historyofthesaints.org or give us a call, 801-541-9760. Again, that number, if you want to go, 801-541-9760, or go to historyofthesaints.org. Either way, I'm going to be out there, so I would love to have you. All right. Like I said, it's been an interesting week. A lot of introspection and a lot of time spent in prayer, in the temple, in contemplating my future. I intend to keep doing these firesides. To me and the way that the Lord is speaking to me, it is the right thing to do to keep doing these firesides. But I want to reach more people, younger audiences. Not sure how to do that. I'm changing, I'm learning, I'm developing, and I hope you'll be patient with me as I try. But one thing tonight I would like you to do, talk to me. And tell me how many of you are listening. Tell me where you're watching from. And tell me why you're here. I guess I'm saying I need the feedback. Why are you here? And how can I help you? That's the key thing. How can I, with my weak skills, how can I help you? If you'll have a prayer in your heart tonight, there should be some kind of a miracle that happens. First story. The story is told in family records that a wagon train of pioneers was crossing the Great Plains about 1848. One husband became irritated because the long dresses of his wives was stirring up dust along the trail. So he ordered the wives to cut those dresses off. One of the wives refused, and that husband grabbed her, turned her over his knee, and cut her dress off anyway. Well, I wasn't there. I'm not going to judge. But that young woman was so angry and so indignant that as soon as she arrived in Salt Lake City, she petitioned the prophet for a divorce, and it was granted. Well, that feisty young woman, and again, I'm not mentioning the husband. I don't need to. He is one of our great ones in church history. That feisty young woman was born Eliza Jane Graham in 1825 in Chester, Pennsylvania. By 1840, Eliza was living with her family in Hancock County, Illinois, and she was a member of the church. Then in June 1844, Eliza's aunt and uncle, Samuel and Ann Fleming, operated the Warsaw House Hotel in Warsaw, Illinois. Eliza was 18. She was down in Warsaw, living with her aunt and uncle, who weren't members of the church, and she was working for them as a waitress. She was there in the Warsaw House Hotel on the evening of June 27th, 1844, when men with faces still painted black began coming in and asking for food and drink. Eliza waited on them. She actually heard Thomas C. Sharp declare, quote, "We have finished the head leading men of the Mormon Church," end of quote. This was the night of the martyrdom. And this is the aftermath. As Eliza continued serving the men, more came, and the talk turned to bragging and boasting of murdering Joseph and Hiram Smith. These were the actual principal men of the mob that had stormed the jail at Carthage and murdered the prophet and the patriarch. The more alcohol was consumed that night, the louder and more boisterous they became in proclaiming their deeds of infamy. What they did not know is that Eliza was a member of the church, and she was listening carefully to everything that was said and who said it. After that night was over, Eliza moved to Nauvoo to live with her parents. Then, in May 1845, in Carthage, Illinois, 5 men were brought to trial and charged with conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Joseph Smith. The prosecution learned of young Eliza Jane and subpoenaed her to testify in the trial. Now, church leaders, Brigham Young and the others in Nauvoo, felt that it was unsafe to even go to the trial, let alone to testify. It is reported that the anti-Mormons posted a mob of nearly 1,000 men outside Carthage in an effort to keep any Mormons or their friends from attending and testifying, end of quote. Nevertheless, can you imagine? With only a few days advance notice, Eliza Jane agreed to testify, and she went to Carthage. In the trial, she stood and testified with clarity and precision exactly what she had seen and heard, and that in the midst of a mob as hostile as the one that killed the martyrs. We can only imagine what she endured in the 5 days of that trial, especially under cross-examination by the defense. Every effort that could be employed to discredit her testimony was employed before a clearly biased court. The courage, the strength, the grit of this young woman is exceptional and worth remembering. Well, I don't know if you know the outcome, but in the end, notwithstanding Eliza's testimony, all 5 defendants were acquitted. They let him go. Justice was not served. The matter was closed. Louisa Barnes Pratt, a friend of Eliza's, left this summary. She said, "There was no lack of evidence in regard to the perpetrators of the bloody deed. I was intimately acquainted," she said, "with one Miss Graham, a truthful, amiable girl who was living with an aunt of hers in Warsaw at the time. She testified in Carthage court that the mobbers ate supper at the hotel where she lived that night on their return from the scene of action, that she heard certain individuals calling them by name, boast of their conquest, killing prisoners in jail. One says, 'It was my rifle that did the deed.' Another, 'It was mine,' etc. And thus they exulted in the committal of as black-hearted a crime as ever stained the annals of history. Was the testimony heeded by the judges of Illinois? It was not. The stain is on that state and will remain till the great judge of all comes in power to avenge the blood of the innocent. Then Governor Ford will have a fearful account to give." End of quote. Eliza Jane Graham, quietly and without fanfare, stood by her witness and testimony the rest of her days. She married again in Salt Lake City and later moved to Uintah County, Wyoming. She was reported to have died there in childbirth in 1863. And because of dangers from local tribes, she was buried in an unknown grave. Unknown, but not forgotten. Eliza was 38 years old. This is a woman of courage in testimony who should be remembered. Next story. Somewhere around 875 BC, the king of Syria mounted hostilities against the nation of Israel and marched his armies into Israel with the intention of establishing a base camp of invasion. However, when the king of Syria got there, he found the warriors of Israel already there and waiting for him. The king tried elsewhere to make a camp, and once again, Israel was there and waiting for him. Several times he tried, and each time the men of Israel were waiting for him. Finally, in frustration, the king of Syria determined that there had to be spies in his camp who were tipping off the Israelite king. "Will ye not shew me," he said, "which of us is for the king of Israel?" And one of his servants said, "None, my lord, O king. But Elisha the prophet that is in Israel telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber." End of quote. Well, hearing that, the king determined to locate and capture Elisha. Accordingly, after learning that Elisha was in Dothan along the caravan road, he sent horses and chariots and a great host of men by night to take the prophet, an army to take one old man. Well, the following morning, Elisha's new servant, a young man, arose early and went outside. You can imagine his surprise when he saw their village surrounded by an army with horses and chariots. The sight, the unholy sight, unnerved the young man. An army was daunting enough, but horses and chariots? These were symbols of power in the ancient world, might and force. This was an unadulterated show of power and intimidation. In a panic, that young man ran back to Elisha, his master. "Alas, my master," he cried in terror. "How shall we do? What are we going to do?" Elisha went out and looked upon the host surrounding him, and then he spoke. fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. Elisha then offered prayer. Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. End of quote. Who were those horses and chariots of fire? They were the angels of heaven. And indeed, they were more in numbers, more in strength, more in power than the king of Syria ever dreamed. I love this story. And you know what? They can be with us as well. This story is a voice out of the long scattered dust for us. We live in the presence of the hosts of heaven. They see us, they know us, they love us, and oftentimes in difficult situations are appointed to help us, though we may never see them. So have said the prophets. I'll say it again. For you, any and all of you feeling overwhelmed, intimidated, and underqualified, keep the faith. Pray in faith, and remember, fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. Next story. After the prophet Joseph Smith obtained the gold plates, and before he began in earnest the work of translation, Joseph sought help with the translation. At one point in the fall of 1827, Joseph sent his mother, Lucy Mack Smith, north up above Palmyra to Martin Harris's farm with a request for help with the translation. Now, Lucy Smith really didn't want to deliver that message because Martin Harris's wife, Lucy Harris, was, and I quote, a peculiar woman, one that was naturally of a very jealous disposition. Besides, she was rather dull of hearing, and when anything was said that she did not hear distinctly, she suspected it was some secret which was designedly kept from her. End of quote. So, nevertheless, Mother Lucy Mack Smith went and related the story of the gold plates and the need for help to Martin and Lucy Harris. Both Martin and Lucy agreed to meet with Joseph the following Tuesday at the Smith home south of Palmyra. I quote now from Lucy Mack Smith. Accordingly, when Tuesday afternoon came, Mrs. Harris made her appearance, and she was hardly seated when she began to importune Joseph relative to the truth of what he had said concerning the record, declaring that if he really had any plates, she would see them, and that she was determined to help him publish them. He, Joseph, told her, Lucy Harris, she was mistaken, that she could not see the plates, for he was not permitted to exhibit them to anyone save those whom the Lord should appoint to testify of them. And in relation to assistants, Joseph observed, I always prefer dealing with men rather than their wives. Well, Lucy continued, this highly displeased Mrs. Harris, for she considered herself as altogether superior to her husband, and she continued to importune him. She would say, now, Joseph, are you not telling me a lie? Can you look me full in the eye and say it before God that you have in reality found a record as you pretend? To this, Joseph replied, what, yes, Mrs. Harris, I would as soon look you in the face and say so as not, if that will be any gratification to you. Then said she, Joseph, I will tell you what I will do. If I can get a witness that you speak the truth, I will believe all you say about the matter, and I shall want to do something about the translation. I mean to help you anyway. Well, this closed, Lucy said, the evening's conversation. The next morning, Lucy Harris arose. She related a very remarkable dream, which she said she had that night, and it ran about as follows. She said that a personage appeared to her during the previous night, who told her that as she had disputed the servant of the Lord and said his word was not to be believed, and also had asked him many improper questions, she had done that which was not right in the sight of God. After which he, the messenger, said again, "Behold, here are the plates. Look upon them and believe." After giving us an account of her dream, Lucy Smith said, she described the record very minutely, then told us that she had made up her mind in relation to the course which she intended to pursue, namely, that she had in her possession $28 which she received from her mother just before she died, while on her deathbed, and that Joseph should accept of it. That if he would, he might give his note, but he should certainly take it upon some terms. This last proposal Joseph accepted in order to get rid of further importunity upon the subject. End of quote. Lucy Harris saw the plates. Now, it's often described that Mother Mary Whitmer was the only woman to ever see the gold plates of the Book of Mormon, but she wasn't. Lucy Harris saw them too, and in a most remarkable vision. Now, what Lucy Harris did with that witness, well, that's another story for another time. But suffice it to say, she too saw the plates. Let's take a break. How are you? And are you well? How was your 4th? How was your summer? I wish I could do something to help and make your life better. Next summer, my friends, I am going to the South Pacific with my sweetheart. We're going to the islands of the South Pacific on a cruise with Fun for Less Tours. I'm inviting you to come. If you'd like to go and tour the South Pacific, the beautiful islands of the South Pacific, next summer, contact funforlesstours.com. And one more time, that book, the latest one that we did, The God of This Land, Stories of the American Founding. The popularity of that book has been overwhelming. I probably won't mention it very much again since the holiday of the 4th is past, maybe. But if you would like a copy of The God of This Land, Stories of the American Founding, you can get it at glenrawsonstories.com. The premise of that book is very simple. The book tells stories about men and women and events of the American founding, how we came to be a free nation. The premise of the book is that we are a nation because Jesus Christ is the God of this land and he so willed it. That is what the book is about. If you'd like a copy, go to glenrawsonstories.com. Next story. In the summer of 1834, the prophet Joseph Smith, with approximately 230 other individuals, marched at the Lord's command to Missouri. They went, as the Lord said, "The strength of mine house, which are my warriors," he said. They went to redeem my vineyard, the Lord said. Well, the march of Zion's camp to reclaim our lands in Jackson County was roughly 900 miles in the heat of a Midwest summer. The following is the recollection of Zara Cole about one of those days, as it is recorded by Oliver B. Huntington. Quote, "One hot day in June 1834, after an unusually long, hard day's travel over a rolling prairies without sufficient water laid in for the men and no water encountered for the teams, they made camp on a prairie. the end of which it was impossible to reach or even see. After tents were pitched and the teams turned out, a strong guard had to be placed to keep the animals. Men were very quietly complaining of the location, the lack of wood, no water to cook with. Even if they had plenty of wood, some teams were about give out, and 1,000 other little troubles acted out if not spoken of. The prophet, meaning the prophet Joseph, sat in his tent door, watching and listening to all that could be seen or heard. At last, he quietly asked for a spade. There was no noise, no bustle, no show of greatness or power about this man who had seen the Creator of heaven and earth and had received from him at different times unmeasured power, only in keeping with circumstances. And as the spade was handed him, he measured the extent of the camp with his eye, and in the most convenient place for all, he commenced to dig in the earth. There was no rock to split open as with Moses of old, or he could have done that more easily or quickly, but he quietly dug a well only a few feet deep and then left it. Presently the water began to come in, and it kept rising in the well until the mules and horses came and drank therefrom, as the water was so near the surface. The prophet went and sat in the door of his tent and witnessed the joy of all, even of the animals as they quenched their thirst in this God-given supply. There was no wonder or proclamation over the matter, as Brother Cole stated it, and perhaps not a dozen men in the camp witnessed it as he did. And he looked upon it, Brother Cole looked upon it, as one of the greatest miracles ever performed by man as an instrument in the hands of the great Creator. My friends, I witness to you, Joseph Smith was a modern Moses. He performed the miracles of Moses. He led Israel as Moses did. He restored the law of the Lord as did Moses. Joseph Smith was a prophet. Next story. Although the Lord Jesus Christ was born after the manner of the flesh, he didn't live after the manner of all men in this world. He was not a natural man. There was nothing coarse, cruel, vulgar, or profane about him. He was a pure and holy man, which makes this story all the more remarkable. On a late night in Capernaum, when Jesus would have wanted sleep, and multitudes of the needy came to his door, he went out unto them and healed them. And then again, when he wanted solitude after the death of John the Baptist, 5,000 people came and besought him, and he welcomed and fed them. It did not matter to him whether it was Pharisees or publicans. He ate with them all. Whether it was beggars or blind men, lepers or lame, sinners or saints, all came and all were loved and welcomed by him. The Savior proved by his life that all men are precious to him. All are invited to come. None then and none now are turned away. And again, when he appeared to his disciples after the resurrection, some stood doubting and wondering. Also, but it didn't matter where they stood or how they felt. They were still invited to stand next to him and feel those sacred wounds. And then again, move forward, bountiful. All in that gathering were commanded to come unto him and thrust their hands into his side and feel the prints of the nails in his hands and feet. And one by one, all 2,500 came. And then again, 3 Nephi 17, one by one, he took their sick and afflicted and healed them. All of them, completely. Then their children. He gathered them to him, and with great tenderness, he blessed each one. Their cups were already filled, but the master was not finished. He then administered the bread and wine to each of them, inviting each to enter into a sacred covenant relationship with him. Now, I marveled for years at these stories, at the Savior's careful attention to detail and to individuals one by one. I believe it was recorded as a testament to his character, to his love, to the nature of exalted beings. At the close of that wonderful day in Bountiful, Jesus said, "Ye see that I have commanded that none of you should go away, but rather have commanded that each of you should come unto me, that ye might feel and see. Even so shall ye do unto the world." If there are any of you listening to me who, for whatever reason, tend to scorn, judge, and push other people away because of their supposed weakness or defect, please know you are treading on dangerous ground and opening yourself up to temptation. And in the end, it may be you who is pushed away when you most want to draw near. Jesus knew all men in their hearts, and he feared none of them. His righteousness was greater than our weaknesses. He was pure and holy, and we're not, and he still loves us. Before him, every single one of us is unworthy, but none of us is unwanted. Would you be like Jesus? Would you be a savior of mankind? Well, it needs to be the same with us. We are afraid of no one. All are welcomed. If there are any of you who have been, as I have been, judged, unworthy, wicked, and unwanted, I understand. It hurts, especially when it comes from those you love. But we have to let it go. We have to forgive them. Blessed are ye if ye have been so judged, for the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was there before us, and you, if you endure it well, will have a special place with him. Don't judge, and allow those who will to judge you. Keep the faith. Last story tonight, and the title of this fireside. July the 1st, 1863, the height of the Civil War. Confederate General Robert E. Lee marched his forces north out of a devastated Virginia, seeking horses and supplies. As they marched through southern Pennsylvania, a contingent of Confederate troops came near to a crossroads town called Gettysburg. And as they did, they happened upon Union force cavalrymen. Now, it wasn't planned, but the scene quickly escalated into battle, a bloody battle that lasted for 3 days and would involve 160,000 soldiers and lead to 51,000 casualties, the largest and bloodiest battle of record on American soil. The Battle of Gettysburg. When it was over, the dead were hastily buried, and Robert E. Lee fled south, never to come north again. Now later, citizens of Pennsylvania and the federal government decided to give the dead a proper burial. And the Soldiers' National Cemetery was created there at Gettysburg. November 19th, 1863, was the date set apart for the dedication of the cemetery. Edward Everett, a very popular and powerful orator, was scheduled as the dedicatory speaker. United States President Abraham Lincoln was asked if he would attend and deliver, quote, a few appropriate remarks. Well, on the day of the event, Everett stood and spoke for about 2 hours, describing the battle, praising the soldiers, and talking about the war. When he was done, Lincoln stood up and spoke for about 2 minutes and about 270 words. As the years passed, Edward Everett's speech would be mostly forgotten. But Lincoln's words became immortal. They became a part of Americana. Why? Why? Well, this is Lincoln's speech in its entirety. He said, listen carefully, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is, for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. End of quote. In the opening sentence, Abraham Lincoln reframed the occasion and indeed the entire Civil War. He said, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. End of quote. You ever thought of this? What event is he speaking of that happened 87 years prior to that date? It was the Declaration of Independence. That document, the Declaration of Independence, is the birth certificate of the American Republic. It is the American creed. The Civil War, according to Lincoln, was being waged for what purpose? For what reason? To determine if this nation, dedicated to and believing that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, can survive, should survive. The Civil War was fought ultimately as a test of our national commitment to the Declaration of Independence. And then the wise Lincoln reframed the conflict. The dead had given their all on the battlefield of Gettysburg and across the country. And then he handed the battle off to us. The battle for the same purposes now belongs to us, the living, to finish the fight for which they gave their all. Will we be a free people, committed to liberty and the equal rights of all? Or will we be socialist pawns of a sprawling government? The Civil War was not the end of the conflict. The battle rages still. Will government of the people, by the people, and for the people perish in America? Or will it live on? I tell you, the power and sovereignty of government belongs to you. Take it back. The 4th of July is over, my friends. But Lincoln's charge lives on in the spirited words of John Adams: independence forever.